Guys, Pastor Dave Mathis, here tonight with a really interesting show. I guarantee it. You know, folks, many people go through many phases in their life, and some of them are all Christian. Some of the details of their life could be embarrassing for most to say, and others are a walk with Jesus Christ. What happens when north eats south? We're going to find that out from a real person who has a real ministry. Let me introduce to you GW. GW, come on down.
How are you doing? Thank you for having me on.
Was that a good introduction?
That was great.
Good. Well, GW, I got to ask you a question first because I just met you. I know your story now, but I'm wondering why you don't have a name. Why do you call yourself just GW?
Sometimes it's GW, sometimes it's Gary, sometimes it's Josiah, and just depends on who's yelling at me.
Is it creditors that cause you to keep changing your mind?
No, God just kind of changed my name along the way.
Well, we're starting out with a good mood, right? So I want to continue that. I don't know if you've ever watched our program before, but we're a Christian program, and we never start without finding what your favorite Bible verse is and why you like it. Take it away, GW.
2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, and the new is here. And the reason I like that so much is because I've done so much, and God has just created a whole new creation.
I heard from somebody, maybe somebody else interviewed you, but I heard that you don't even recognize your old self anymore. Is that correct?
Oh, that old self is, it looks 3 different phases away.
We're going to talk about phase by phase, but I think people are going to be amazed at how your life has changed. And with your life, I've seen some pictures. Your appearance has changed too, hasn't it?
It has. That covers a lot of years.
And some of those early pictures I don't even recognize you in. Now let's start out, if you don't mind, with phase number 1 of your life. And I think that goes up to about high school. Is that correct?
It does.
Okay, start out and tell us what your growing up, childhood, and high school years were like.
Okay, so I was raised in the Appalachian Mountains and just a hardworking family. And I was 95% hearing impaired until my second year of high school. And I'd failed English, spelling, grammar, punctuation. I'd failed everything. So, and when I would get bored, I would just draw. But I was bullied a lot because, well, one, I couldn't hear. And sometimes that's good because you can't hear people bully you. So.
Okay, wait a minute. You were 95% deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And you hinted at the fact that school was not your passion and that you didn't do real well in school. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were you in special education? Did you have help in school because of your deafness?
Actually, my mom, she would use flashcards with me, and she would work with me, and she would say, you can do anything you put your mind to. And that was one of the things where she would push me along, and that just until they did the surgery, then I could hear after that.
Let's get to the surgery in a second. I still want to explore a little bit your childhood because you're not the only one that goes through bullying. I taught school for 30 years, and it happens. If you're not in the in crowd, you get bullied. Describe to me how you were bullied. Was it fighting, making fun of you? What was it like?
All the above. They would make fun of me. Sometimes it would be fights. It was just different things. And a lot of times I didn't even know what was going on or why I was even being bullied. But it was, especially if you can't hear, there's the communication's not there. So if you're playing sports or you're playing games, you can't follow along because you don't know what's going on.
So you had this problem. What was going on inside of you as you were explaining to parents that have kids that are bullied? How did you feel as a teenager going to school and being bullied?
1, I didn't want to go to school, and 2, I didn't want to live, and I wasn't happy. But you could never tell that because a lot of times you can put on a mask and you can look happy, you can look like you're okay, but that's the whole point of it is you don't want people to see that there's something wrong. Because if they know that you're not happy and you don't want to live, then they're getting ready to do all kinds of therapy and different things to you.
I ran across people in school that even were suicidal. Were you suicidal?
I was not.
Okay. And now, home life. You're bullied at school. Was home life a haven for you, or did you have trouble at home too?
Actually, my dad worked off, and my mom, she owned actually the shop that I'm sitting in, and so she was a very hardworking family. So there was, we planted our garden, so the food that we had is what we grew, and a lot of times people didn't have money that came to my mom's shop, so they actually bartered. So it could be vegetables, it could be corn. I mean, I think in this shop there's been all kinds of things. I think there was cars traded, and there might have been a goat or two that was even sold out of here.
Did you have friends or girlfriends?
Didn't have very many friends. I had one really good friend, and that was about it. Because when you're not in the in crowd, people don't want to be around you. And we
Plus,
were we
if
were
they
very
if you can't hear them.
yeah, and we were very poor. So we had a lot of love. We had things to eat, as in country food like pinto beans and fried potatoes and different things. So it's not always what you want, but there was something to eat.
Every once in a while, something's going to hit me. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just rap with you or talk to you about that or just make a statement.
Okay.
I was a teacher for 30 years. I was a minister for 14 years. And I ran across a lot of kids that were bullied.
Hmm.
It's real.
Yeah.
And sometimes parents, it's hard to explain to parents, not yours, but to parents.
Hmm.
I just want to make a comment here. If you're watching this program and you got kids and they're being bullied, listen to what GW said about what it felt like, what school years were like, what grades were like, and understand and support your child. Did I say that right, GW?
You did. And last year, it's interesting because there was over 700,000 people committed suicide. And that not only goes along with after COVID with the hearing impaired and the deaf. That was very confusing because during that time I actually lost my hearing for 8 weeks, and I didn't realize that I still use my eyes to hear. And what I mean by that, I read people's lips. But during COVID, when everybody had to wear a mask, it threw me off kilter.
Now, you were in high school then. When COVID was out, you were an adult, right?
Correct.
Okay, now, let's back up a second. I think there's a picture of you because I want people to see how you changed of when you were maybe a senior in high school. Is that right?
That's around about 1983, 1984.
Okay, now, somewhere along the line, as we move into phase two, your hearing got better. Can you explain that?
It did. I had surgery my second year of high school. They actually put a tube in my ear, and they did surgery right there inside the office. They couldn't numb my eardrum, so they literally took a big long needle and busted my eardrum. And then they vacuumed all of the fluid out, and then they put in the tube.
Backing up just a step, were you a Christian at that time? Were you going to church?
Yeah, was raised in church, so I was there every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and also on Wednesday and every function in between.
Did you know Christ like you know him now?
Oh no, wasn't even close.
Okay, I'm looking at it from your perspective. Well, parents hear that. They should look at if they have a special needs child or even a regular child is being bullied, just they'll listen to you and hear what it feels like really. Now, okay, high school is over. Did that change your life when you got your hearing back?
It did. It really changed to where you're functioning. You can actually, things were very loud. It was too loud, and where I wasn't used to hearing. So then it was like an overload of information, and that's kind of where it stimulates. There's just so much going on. Sometimes you really just can't focus because there's just too much.
Did you praise God for the healing, or did you just praise the operation?
It was that it was just the operation. I guess it was just a function of what had gone on. But the real praise came from when I was 20. I had ruptured two of my disc and bulged a third, and they said I would never walk again.
That's interesting. We'll back up to that story again in a second. But right after high school, you graduated. Did you go to college?
I did for a little bit. Really didn't like school. I more wanted to get out and just work, and that's the way I was raised. I would mow yards. I would do different things, paper routes, and uh, go downtown, take a bucket, and wash the store's windows. Was always doing things, and I learned a lot of that from my mom. Being in her shop.
Now, did you stay in town when you graduated, or did you move someplace?
I moved to Nashville when I was around 32.
Okay, now we're going to go into phase two of your life.
Yeah.
Explain to me. I said you're going to look at how you aged. Here you are at 22, ready. Looks like a cowboy hat on and everything. So you're going to Nashville in the country and western crowd, right?
Yes.
Okay, explain to me a little bit about what you did there and what you liked and how your life changed.
So right around 32 is when I moved to Nashville, and one of my friends worked for a famous radio station. So that was like my golden ticket to the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman, different football games and different things like that. So I was always
backstage. Back up, Bob, will you? Okay, here you are with who?
Right there is Garth Brooks' fiddle player in the white and black shirt, and his manager, his best friend, standing beside of him. And that's backstage at the Grand Ole Opry.
So you were a singer?
Oh, no. Just someone that would just go to all the different parties. So that's little Jimmy Dickens right there.
I actually saw him in person one time. And there you are. Now you're with a different crowd, even though you're working someplace. How did that change your life?
The place where I worked, we had seats at the football game. So was always at the football games, going to play hockey. Every night there was even the tapings downtown, or even, a record label party. There was always something. It was like every night was a party. And, it could be Vince Gill. It could be Miss Brady. It was always something going on. So it was never dull. There was always a party.
Okay, I caught the word party. It doesn't sound like church.
No.
So were you drinking?
There was a lot of drinking.
Drugs?
There was some. There's one part that's going to be that we're putting into the movie where someone was smoking some herbs in the car.
So there was drinking.
And it wasn't oregano. So
were there women?
There was all kinds of stuff going on.
So we can say
everything the Bible says not to do. I think I did it except for kill someone.
I'm not laughing about the killing. Just it's so different from a person that's raised in a church home and told to go to church all the time, and instead of church, they went into the church of partying, right?
It's kind of like a dog when it gets loose; it just runs wild.
Did you know you were doing wrong?
Oh yeah.
Any guilt feelings or anything that this is all going on? Did you tell your mom and dad?
Oh, every time I would do something I shouldn't be doing, my mom would be calling. It's like she had some type of sense or some type of something going on. I think she had like a camera.
So she knew what you did. So you're living the wrong life. Were you still going to church occasionally?
Every once in a while, if someone invited me, but most of the time I wasn't. So.
Were you married?
No.
I'm learning a lot about you here, and sometimes when they go through those things, we think we're happy, but looking back on it, you weren't really happy, were you?
No, it was just a lot of things that keep you busy. And when you're in the party lifestyle and there's something to do every day, there's always an event. It's like you go from function to function to function to function. But sometimes, you almost function out because, there's just so much going on. Plus, working a full-time job and everything else. So
That's one thing that amazes me about this story is that you're with the party crowd, with the famous people, but during the day, you're just an everyday worker.
yeah. And of course, there was no social media back then. So, it was probably for the best.
People didn't find out what you're doing. I want to make this point as we go through this in phase 2. I've got this feeling that we're talking to people out there that know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe they're in the middle of it. Maybe they started out with parents that were Christian dragging them to church, but they grew up and began to walk on the wild side of the track. And they're listening to your story real carefully because they want to change their life too and want to know how you did it. So if I made the point right so far, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it what I said is what is going through your life?
Yeah, you're spot on.
Good. I'm glad. I work hard at that. Now, I think it's time for phase 3 because every once in a while, by the way, I learned a long time ago that if there's not a significant event in your life, you'll be like you are for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So if you don't have something that happens to change your life, you'll be like you are today.
Yeah.
Just remember that as we get farther and talk about it, because now we're going into phase 3. There must have been a significant event in your life that made you ponder the direction it was going, was there?
There was. And what happened was my mom had called and said, you need to come home. Your father's going to die. He's in the hospital. And so when I went to my boss and said, I need to leave, he said, whenever you get all your work finished and all your loose ends tied, then you can leave. And I used to have a really bad temper. And so I couldn't even calm down to even drive. And so didn't even leave the building. I was still at my desk. And finally, when I did leave, I went and packed my clothes. They said that my dad wasn't going to live, and it was something with his heart. And then by the time I had got here, they said that we have good news and bad news. The good news is he's not going to die, but the bad news is he has cancer. And so with prayer and back to the prayer. So 30 days later, the cancer was gone, but I was still angry and there was change going to come. And so I moved to Florida. And so the job I was supposed to have had, they gave to somebody else. And so, the partying didn't slow down. It increased because there was more things to do because I was going from a small town to Nashville, now to Orlando, where there was always something to do. And so with that, the first 4 years there was just working, and the partying. But then I had identity theft. They got into my checking, my savings, my credit cards. And in 20 days, I was getting ready to go to prison.
So wait, I just caught that. You mean when you moved to Orlando, you were getting close to going to prison? Why would you go to prison if you had your identity stolen?
It was over $20-some thousand, and that's a felony. And so they actually came and padlocked my house. I ended up being homeless. I lived with a family from Craigslist. There was 9 people that lived there. There was a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and then everybody else. And so it was a big mess. It took 7 years to get out of the identity theft because that was right around the 2008. So I got thrown into the court process.
Okay, now we're getting to a point for a decision, I think, from you. Your dad's got cancer. You're in Orlando partying, but all of a sudden, your world comes crashing down like very few people that I met. A lot of people that accept Christ have events in their life, maybe it's alcoholism or something else, but you had everything happening to you. God must have been kicking you in the rear.
He was wanting me to move in the direction he wanted me to move in.
And give you little hints.
When you've been homeless and everything else, and you know, it's just, I knew what I needed to do. It's just, I didn't want to do it. And it's as the
Did your
longer you're disobedient, the until the behavior changes, morale's not going to change.
did your dad pass away?
He has not. He just had his 83rd birthday.
Wow, wow. How about your mom?
She passed away 10 years ago, and she had died 4 times, and twice she was dead for 30 minutes.
Okay, let's get into your decision. People always tell me these great decisions that they made in the middle of a church or somebody dragging them to the altar. How was your come to Jesus moment?
Well, when I had a sinus infection, my friends wanted me to go out and party, and I didn't want to, and they just kept on. And finally, I went, and I saw how everybody ran from me. They're like, oh goodness. And everybody else thought it was funny me picking on everybody, but it wasn't funny to them. And so when I had gone out to the cab, I said, "This is where I live." He said, I know where you live now. I know where you lived before." He said, "This is the first time in 10 years I have ever seen you sober." And that really just, struck a chord with me. It seared my heart to where I didn't even want to drink again. And I actually stopped drinking at that very moment.
I had people tell me before that when they make that come to Jesus moment, 2 points. One is after they make it, the world looks different to them. Did it to you?
It was starting to change, and God was still working on me. But there was still a lot of pride there. I would microwave water to fill my stomach at night. And because I was too prideful to go to the food pantry where I actually volunteered at. But finally, when you get hungry enough, you'll do what needs to be done. And they said, "There's no shame here. Raise your head." And so God was just putting people around me that was just moving me along. But I was working 2 part-time jobs because when 2008 hit, everybody lost their jobs, or almost, or they were foreclosed on. There was, it was really, really bad in Florida. And so with that, I was working an overnight, and my prayer came back, "God, take me." It was the same prayer that I had when I was young, except this time it was, "I surrender." That was added to it, which is a biggie, and I'm done. And so I'd fallen asleep while driving, and my car went off the road and was headed straight towards a pole with a transformer on it. And my phone flashed because it was turned off because I'd left work. So I get back onto the road, and then I touched my screen and answered the call. And it was a man from New York that had said, "God told me to call you that you're in danger." And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I fell asleep and my car went off the road. It was headed towards a pole with a transformer on it." And he said, "I have to stay on the phone with you till you're parked. How far are you away?" And I said, "About 3 minutes." And I said, "Oh, I'm awake. I'm awake." He said, "That wasn't what I was instructed." But this is what he said that really got my attention. He said, "Your divine life purpose is much needed in the world." And, God was basically saying, "I've saved your life. I'm tired of fooling with you. You need to do what I want you to do."
Now, I think you've been doing what he wants you to do. I heard, and I know, in fact, I don't just heard, you were the one who told me. You've written 19 books,
Mhm.
many of them about your testimony, many of them, is that correct?
That's correct. So that's book number 2 that was revealed at the city of David in Israel. God actually sent me to Israel by myself. He gave me the President's Award where I used to work, and that's where I went, and that book was revealed. So imagine never traveling to anywhere else other than down the road, and you're in Israel, a whole nother country, and there's no one there to take you around, guide you, or anything else. And there was bombs going off. There was different things, and God wrote actually 3 more books while I was there.
So you got 19 books, and here's the key thing, and we're going to give it a little teaser here as we wind down because many people want more information. You have written and directed and produced a soon to be movie called I Am Josiah. Tell me who Josiah is.
So the company I used to work for, I was going to pick up the vice president, and God says, "I'm giving you a new name." And I go, okay. And he says, Josiah. And I
So
laughed. I didn't
you're
mean to
Josiah?
laugh.
So you're Josiah.
So Josiah, yes, he changed my name. So I didn't understand. And I said, you gave me something I can't spell. I wasn't being funny. I have trouble spelling. So, don't let what we think would be a deficiency or, a dysfunction or anything else, because there's 19 books and there's self-publishing books. God put me through the process of, he wants people to get their testimonies out into the world. And so, what's stopping you from self-publishing? I mean, even with audiobooks and different things, I didn't know the technology. I just had to pray and go, okay, what do you mean to do? What button do I push?
Well, wow, this is something. Now, I understand I Am Josiah has high hopes and is now in production as a movie that's going to show on television. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we couldn't condense everything down. It was going to be on screen, and there was just so much information we couldn't condense it. It would have left out important parts that people need to know. And so it's going to be a TV series, and you're going to see a lot of different stories that unfolds. And we don't hold anything out. It's raw, because if I try to pretend that I'm somebody that I'm not.
Hold it, stop. I said this is a teaser. I don't want to go farther with it. I want you to watch the TV series. And it's in production. And we're going to, if he's willing, I know he is, he said he would, we're going to do part 2 next week. And that's going to be the movie. And I understand you're going to bring either some people that are in it or somebody else with you. You're going to look and try and bring some people that we can talk about the movie. Is that correct? It's your life.
That's correct.
Now, I don't want to say too much more, folks, because here we are having a nice little conversation. And if we did good, you'll watch next week. So, bye now.
See you.